Start with broadband. Naturally, being a rural TD, and broadband is of crucial importance to us in the rural Ireland. And actually, the last phone call I get before I came in here was from a businessman on the Carlow-Kilkenny border who has problems with his internet and hasn't broadband. And he's waiting for it, and he got here to put in broadband from the stop working. 3 months, he's contacted him. I know it's not your responsibility, I'm just raising the fact how important broadband is to rural Ireland and the rollout of broadband. And the 550,000 people that are out there waiting for broadband. And I have kind of a half system of broadband, but it's not fast enough and not good enough in my own personal home at home. So it's the future of Ireland, and we're at a disadvantage in rural Ireland by not having broadband to compete with Dublin, etc., and urban areas. And it's a big disadvantage. And I have people constantly contacting me if they come to live in Kilkenny. Is the broadband there? Is it? They come, they can work from home, and it's just not available. And we're losing out badly in small villages and towns around the country, rural Ireland. And that's just an open, just to let you know how serious it is.
So, we understand that fully, Deputy. I mean, what we want to do is to try and move forward to a situation where there's something put to government that they're in a position to accept. If they accept it, then the next focus is on the rollout and the deployment. And as I understand it, part of the bid process by the final bidder is setting out a detailed deployment plan, and again we will share that. It's really, really important, and I have family who live in rural Ireland as well. Really, really important that we can get boots on the ground and get this up and mobilised and delivered as quickly as we possibly can. And I accept.
This is important now, as what the electricity rollout in the 50s and 60s was. It's that important to the business sector of rural Ireland. I just want to ask the whole system and how this rollout started, and why the consortiums that were involved, 4 or 5 were bidding in the beginning, and how it all ended up at one. What happened, and just in your own words, what happened that all these dares and etc. pulled out during the process? And why did we end up with just one bidder? Can you give me any explanation as a layperson to know why that happened? And where there's not competition, I don't think you have proper business acumen going there. You have to have opposition and bidders against one another to get a proper pricing and proper reward of the consortium and of the contract whenever it is handed out.
So we started with a very open procurement process. 3 organisations were shortlisted: CSIRO, which is the Vodafone ESB consortium, AIR, and the Grannon McCourt led consortium. As the dialogue progressed in September 2017, CSIRO said to us, they wrote to the department formally and said that they found it difficult to develop a competitive business case. Now, Deputy Cullinan was effectively querying whether that was linked to the AIR 300,000K and those 300,000 being taken off the map. It may well have been, but I can't say that with absolute certainty. AIR decided in January 2017 to withdraw from the process. They were in the process at that point.
Sorry, did they give did any of those give a reason why they withdrew?
Yeah, so I can tell you exactly what CSIRO said. Following a comprehensive review, CSIRO cannot develop a competitive business case to justify continued participation in the National Broadband Plan bid process, and therefore has decided to withdraw. That was the formal letter submitted to the department at that point. AIR withdrew in January 2017. At that stage, they were in the middle of a takeover process. They said our decision to exit the MBP process is driven by a range of commercial, regulatory and governance issues. They referred to the complexity of the tender process. As I said earlier, we make no apology for a complex tender document where there's so much state money to be invested. And they had some other broader concerns about the regulatory and pricing regime that existed outside the NBP. We met with AIR on the 23rd of January. We asked them to reflect on their position, and they wrote back to us again on the 30th of January setting that out. So that's effectively the rationale that both of those entities put forward to us.
Regulatory and governance issue. Regulatory and governance issue. What's that? What was the problem? Was it complicated that you had too much criteria laid in there for people to come?
No, I mean we would have had. I think some of the regulatory and governance issues that they arose were broader issues outside of the NBP process. We obviously had extensive governance and delivery processes set out in our own contract documentation. I mean, if you are providing a large amount of taxpayers' money to provide a scheme, you're absolutely sure that they are capable of delivering, that they have the funding set aside to make the investment, that they meet all the deployment milestones. They need milestones around connections of premises, that there's demand stimulation mechanisms set out therein, that there's reporting arrangements to the department, that there's an open book accounting. So the list is as long as your arm in terms of the asks that we made, but we are absolutely determined that they were the right requirements to impose on any entity that would ultimately win the contract to do this, because there is.
Both of those bidders, though, would be indigenous. We say to Thailand, we know of them. They're big companies, and they're rolling out their business the whole time. That's their business. Why wouldn't they be capable of taking on this? Where now we have ENET, an American company based, and they're coming in here in Thailand to roll out the same project. And does it not ask questions how only one bidder left? Does that ask questions? Are there something wrong?
Well, we would have. I don't have a problem with the process that we've engaged in, and I'll stand over that.
But do you think one bidder is the right thing, the right sort of business?
Preferably, we would have preferred to have more than one bidder at the table at the final stage. I mentioned earlier that it is not unusual that you can, in the case of some large infrastructure projects, only have one bidder at the table. For example, in the UK, when they rolled out their equivalent of our high-speed broadband project, there was only one bidder at the table. At the end, there was only one bid submitted, and that was by the incumbent BT. At an earlier stage in the process, what's known as the invitation to submit detailed submissions, we actually got two outline bids, one from AIR and one from the Grannon McCord-led consortium. So that gives you an indication as to the sort of the ballpark that both were in. And we'll have to ensure then, when the process has been concluded, that we're in a position to demonstrate the technical capacity, the business plan, the commercial health, the financial standing, and the ability of the company to roll out the network and to comply with the contractual provisions that the state will put in place.
That's why that's the financial plan and the cost efficiency. You know, that's the important thing. If you're only one bidder, how are you going to be so sure that? And there's all kinds of figures being branded around. It's been said it's going to cost the taxpayer $1 billion first. Now there's figures of $3 billion being mentioned. I even heard bigger figures being mentioned. There's an awful difference in $1 billion and $3 billion and maybe $4 billion. Yeah. I mean, are these just letters, figures that's just been thrown out there? And at the end of the day, is the taxpayers going to carry the bill? And as has been said previously, will we have you in here in the next year or 2 years' time saying a waste of taxpayers' money, and we follow the waste or the cost? And how can you give us a guarantee that this will be cost efficient? So
we have to, as part of the process, before we submit anything to the Minister of the Government, clearly set out our assessment as to how this represents value for money, and to demonstrate that. So there will be a range of contractual obligations inserted. There will be post-contract governance. We will have local and international benchmarks. A lot of the costs that arise are regulated in any event by Comreg, so the air, pole and duct costs. We will have an overview of the procurement processes that the lead bidder will be undertaking for some of the subcontracted work. There is open book accounting, so we can go in and look at the accounts of the final bidder. We know there's a high-level design in place. We will be able to look at the deeper design on a deployment area basis, which represents about 5,000 premises, and look at the costs that are arising there, claw mechanisms, what's in place, all that kind of stuff. So You can rest assured that, you know, we are doing the absolute level of due diligence that will be required, and in fact, not just required of us, but expected by the Minister and the Government before they get any proposals put to them.
Yeah, but as a businessman myself, I know that if I'm a farmer, if I'm contracted out a job, I know the best way I can contract out a job is to put 2 or 3 bidders up there.
Absolutely.
And get the best value for money for me personally is by putting it out there into the market and saying, now you have one consortium. I know you have to give me assurances that you're looking at it from a different way, but you still have one consortium going in, doing a bidding with no one against them. There's no one against them, knowing that what the figure they put in, well, the government or the department has no other alternative, only ours. We're the only alternative is here. So let's get on it and cream it if we want. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying these things can happen.
Yeah, we did seek bids and we got 3 bids. So that is a fact. I mean, we didn't go into the process where we spoke only to one entity. We got 3 bids. People dropped out of the process. We have to be able to demonstrate that the mechanisms available to us to show value for money in a single bidder situation stand up. And that will be scrutinised very, very carefully as the process moves to conclusion.
Can you comment on what I said about this in the newspapers, everything about 1 billion going to 3 billion? Can you comment on that? What kind of ballpark are we looking at here? I mean, I know you can't say out straight, but are we looking at 1 billion cost to roll out this scheme? Are we looking at 2 billion cost? Are we looking at 3 billion cost?
I can't. And I know it's frustrating, but I can't comment on it at this stage.
It's a lot of money to be talking about. 1 billion is a lot of money. Not to be talking 1, 2, 3. Okay. Are you happy then that we say, as Spain mentioned there, about contamination or that? You're happy with the system, we say, after the minister resigning, or the former minister resigning, and I'm not going to go over all that ground again because it's already covered, but are you happy in your skin that this has been covered properly, and that we're going forward, and the taxpayer of this country can be assured that everything's been done proprietary, properly, and above board, that there's no question mark still there that we should know about?
No,
You're happy to stand over that?
I am absolutely happy to stand over that. We have an excellent team of people working in the department on this, both public and private sector. There's been very strong governance within the department. Smith report says what the Smith report says, and I'm assured by that the process is in a good place.
And are you happy with ENET? We say the structure and the company, the consortium as it's set up, you're happy that they're above board? Because we hear different rumours about America, we hear different things coming in. Rumour, I said rumour, now I didn't say fact.
So they have
hear different things.
They have to go through a set of hoops all the way through as part of a pre-qualification process to demonstrate their technical and financial standing and all of that. So if there's a change in the consortium makeup, and changes to consortiums are not unusual. If there's a change in the makeup of a consortium, they have to go through a process that's independent of me, independent of the minister, and come out the other side with a clean bill of health in terms of the criteria that were assessed.
Okay, we'll leave it there. I just want to ask a few local issues about the silver mines and the Voca and silver mines and the mines, just because they're local to me down in Tipperary and know about them and that. I just want to ask, why is the problem with the silver mines? That's going on a long time now, and there seems to be a lot of costs there, and there are questions mark here from the Controller Other and General Honours. What is the situation with the silver mines and Voca? Take the two of them together.
So on Avoca, we spent about 3 million capital monies primarily in making safe the site. I think
who owns the site incidentally?
The state owns the site.
And who owns the silver mine site?
The state owns the silver mine site other than Gortmore, I think. I need to check that. So we spent about 3 million in Avoca. We've made safe the biggest risks that were there. There is an updated plan to be prepared. We hope to have done that by the end of this year. It'll be completed during 2019, and then we need to look at what the overall cost of remediation is at that stage.
What kind of works when you say make the safe? What kind of works have been carried out?
So there's a spoil heap at a place called Tigroni that has been addressed. There's about 850 adits that have been covered. There was a risk to the Dublin-Rosslare line that has been dealt with. That's been made safe in conjunction with Irish Rail. So there, the preliminary sort of safety works that have been done. The bigger plan will be in preparation in 2019, and we need to look at the cost estimate then, figures that have been mooted, albeit that they're somewhat historical, about 50 million, but I don't know what the cost will be. On the silver mines, we spent about 11 million on it. All the work's done, bar the Garryard tailings facility.
Is it safe now? We say contamination. That was a big issue for local farmers. So
the concern that the local farmers had, as I understand it, related primarily to Gartmore tailing facility. So there was works done on that to cover the spoil. Horses had been put on it, left to graze there, concerned that that would disturb the land, that they should have dust blowing and so on. We, through the CSSO, are in discussion with the landowners to look at coming to a suitable arrangement where, well, first of all, we've asked them to take the horses off the land, and secondly, where we come to an appropriate arrangement around the management or ownership of the land, but that hasn't progressed as quickly as we would have hoped. We're having difficulty in getting a regular engagement and a final conclusion.
What's the long-term, what plans have you long-term for silver mines and for Avoca? I mean, what's the long-term plan? What do you hope to end up with it then when all this is contained and rectified?
So I don't know. I mean, the plan for Avoca will look at that. I mean, I know there's been some speculation about sort of historic mine sites, in terms of making it into a tourist attraction and all the rest of it. I mean, there's a lot of contamination there that needs to be dealt with. Silver mines, first priority with all of these is make them safe.
What kind of acreage is involved?
I don't know.
Yeah, just I don't know myself.
From both, to give us an idea of the scale of what we're talking about, because we don't know, are we talking about 10 hectares or 500 hectares?
That's more than that. It's a bigger site than that.
Yeah, so give us an indication. You can send us a note on that.
I will.
Okay, just the last one thing, just inland fisheries, because I come from an area where we have three rivers and trying to preserve salmon in particular. I see a cost of 29 million in inland fisheries. What spend is that? What's that going towards that 29 million in generally? And is that for preservation of the salmon and etc.? I just want to ask that. I just see there natural resources inland fishery.
So there's a big chunk of it goes on pay. So there's over 300 staff in IFI. Another chunk of money that goes to capital works. I mean, they've published a national strategy on angling development in the last couple of years, and we're committing funding for that. There's pensions, non-pay, which is consultancy works that they may need to do, and so on. And that is the bulk of it. So,
much it goes towards conservation? Of that 29 million?
Well, that doesn't include their own resources, so there's a significant chunk of money from their own resources. I'll come back to you on that, Deputy, because there's some good material, albeit very long, on what they are doing in terms of conservation. Now, the National Strategy for Angling Development, the capital works there of about 3 million will account for some of that, but there's a lot on inspections and monitoring and all that kind of stuff that they do through a combination of the money we provide them and their own resources. But let me come back to the committee with a more detailed note on that.
Okay, and the last thing then, Chairman, just on environmental waste. We all had in every county, I was a county council for nearly 20 years, we all had our landfills, or our dumps as we used to call them that time. How safe are all the landfills that were of old around the county, which every county had, and nearly every municipal area one time had a dump, or a landfill, I shouldn't call it a dump, landfills. And I'm just wondering, are they being monitored now in afterthought, years after they've been filled, and what kind of security is there that there's not contamination coming off of those landfills, which weren't done to perfection the time they were being landfilled, because we didn't know enough about the environment at the time.
So there's
local authorities weren't up to scratch.
Yeah, a lot of work being done over the last number of years in terms of closure of some of the historical landfills. And in fact, we've only about 4 or 5 operational landfills in the state now. We spent, there was a European Court of Justice case, colloquially known as Case C494, which required the state to remediate a lot of historical landfills. We spent about 160 million on that. We wrote to the committee at the end of November, setting out where we are on what is called Priority 1 sites. Many of the priority 1 sites are going through various layers of assessment using a methodology that has been agreed between the EPA and the local authorities.
Are they in every county or are they in certain counties?
They're spread right across the country. Do I see any in Kilkenny?
I'm sure there are a few there.
I'm sure there are. Not of the 22 being advanced. So what happens is the landfills in terms of their risk are categorised as A, B or C. Assessments are done then by the local authorities with the main focus being on the category A landfills.
Naturally.
Programmes of works are, the assessment is done, a programme of works emerges from that, and in most cases we fund that from the centre. And in fact, this year, as in 2018, we had 11 million set aside. We'll spend close to 10 million of that. Last year it was somewhat lower, I think about 5.5 million, but we have a very good programme in place now. We have resources assigned at the EPA. We have resources that will be assigned before the end of the year in the regional waste authorities. We have a training for local authority staff. So a very comprehensive and complex programme of works to be rolled out.
And what kind of remedial works do we speak of? We say in the category A now, obviously they're the most dangerous contamination-wise. What kind of?
Some of it may be as simple as taking away the most contaminated waste, making sure it's treated properly, and then putting in a soil berm, as it were, or a plastic underlay and all the rest, and landscaping it. But the important thing is the treatment that is required is defined by a very comprehensive assessment process that has been agreed by the EPA. So if there are extensive works required, the extensive works will be done. So there'll be no corners cut.
Would it mean removing some of the rubbish and incinerators, say, for instance, here in Dublin? Is that part of it?
I can't say for definite, but I couldn't rule it out as an option. I mean, when you get into the business of removing waste, the costs of all this ramp up considerably, because one of the biggest costs of waste, I suppose, is actually the transport. Yeah. So, but I suppose, in terms of the specific issue that you're concerned about, it is being addressed. What is required will be funded, and the state will make good any of the historical landfills that need attention.
Okay, Chairman, I see I've got all the time, Chairman.
Yeah, fine. And just for only a few seconds, thank the Deputy for mentioning the Inland Fisheries Ireland to do good work in the River Nore, the village I live in. They've done good work there. You just mentioned, are they a commercial or a non-commercial state body? Which are they?
So
Pardon?
They're audited by me, so
they're a non-commercial.
Non-commercial.
So they're audited, right, and that's fine. And you did mention they have their own source of income in addition to the 30 million.
Permits, licences and all that.
But that can't be major.
It's not major, and it's declining.
It's declining, so most of their income comes...
state grant.
2017 was about 3 million, but we're seeing a downward trend.
So 90% of their income is your grant. Look, we'll just ask you to send us whatever briefing note or information note you had, because they're an important group.
And there's other stuff going on around the yield support scheme and things like that may be of interest to the committee as well, so I'm happy to provide that.
In terms of that, so we'll ask you to send, you can send that on. So at this stage now, we're going to suspend until 2:15, okay?
Right, just because it's so long, late leave, I just want a few quick questions. I saw just to follow up what you said for yourself on technology. I just want to ask, technology improving and modernising all the time, and a few reports have said that fibre optics might be obsolete in a few years' time, that we're looking towards satellite, maybe wireless, some other technology. And you've spoken already to some of my colleagues there about the cost of the rollout of this. You mentioned 1.1 million poles renting them, and then 200,000 extra ones we put up with a cost with the wire itself. Have you looked at that, about the future? And, in 5 years' time, will satellite be the answer? And at a lot cheaper cost audio than... So, with all this cost in the meantime, the 5 years in the meantime?
So every single technology that is deployable has been looked at. Every company that came forward as part of the procurement process proposed fibre to the home. Every single member state across the EU, in looking at how you deal with the technology infrastructure deficit in rural parts of their country are saying fibre to the home, fixed wireless in some small parts of the overall outlay, and 4G and 5G as a complementary technology. So that the view of, and we have one of the best companies in the world helping us on the technology aspect on this, and they're crystal clear that fibre to the home is the solution. And our own regulator, Comreg, last week indicated that 5G could only be a complementary technology to fibre to the home, and that fibre to the home provides you far greater benefits in terms of speed, scalability and future-proofing.
Can I ask you just, sorry, as layman, 5G, is that satellite? Or?
No, 5G is a mobile, it's a new technology. So what you have in your mobile, have in your mobile now is 4G, so 5G is the next step up from that.
Okay, that's right. No, I wouldn't understand the technology.
Yeah.
No. Just want to ask then about the area rollout of broadband, the scheme that was already rolled out. I think Air got the contract to most of it, am I right? I'm not sure now. Air. You know, that was lucrative parts they took, and was it wrong in Air then to walk away from, we say what we're talking about now, that roll out into the rural areas and out to more costly areas, and that they took the lucrative part and, you know, took the cream and then walked away from the rest of it. And the reason I'm leading up to another question to that, I just want your comment on that first.
So the only circumstances under which the state can intervene is where there's a market failure, when there's no commercial entity prepared to deliver. So Air came forward with a proposition to do another 300,000 premises themselves, so effectively withdraw those 300,000 premises from the map under state aid rules, where there's a binding commitment agreement in place, and we stitched in very, very clearly a specific set of requirements with Air in terms of the rollout time, the delivery, the number of premises we pass and all the rest. We had no obligation, no entitlement to keep the 300k on the map. So we had absolutely no basis to maintain the number of premises at 800,000 plus. It is unfortunate that they walked away after that, because we would have much preferred to have competitive tension in the process right the way through. Their motivations for doing it and withdrawing from the process I outlined earlier. But that's where we are. I mean, we under EU state aid rules, there was no choice available to us. Yeah,
that leads me on to the next couple of questions, and they're mostly local that I've dealt with myself personally. I've raised this case before. Outside, 2 miles outside New Ross town, 3 miles, which is in Kilkenny. A one man, he has 9 children, 11 of them in the house, looking for broadband. He's living in a stretch, in a semi-rural, and he has both sides of his houses. There's 3 houses and 3 houses at both sides, left to right him. One on the right has 3 houses, all have broadband. On the left have three houses on the left have. He's in the middle and he can't get broadband. And I can't understand that, again, as a lay person, why this man in the middle, and only 3 miles outside Ross, cannot get broadband for the life of me. And every time I'm after fighting 2 or 3 elections in the meantime, and he still comes up with the same thing every time I go and knock at his door. And they're still not getting any answers after writing to everyone, Comreg, all the providers, and no one will give him a service. Why?
What will be said is that we're operating in a fully liberalised market. We cannot lean on Air or anybody else to provide a service to a particular area or particular house.
This is a house.
I know, but they make their decisions, and really, that conversation has to happen with Air. We have absolutely no power nor authority, nor does Comreg, to impose a particular requirement on a house where they don't form part of the rural broadband. That's the real reason why we need to deliver the National Broadband Plan.
Now that leads me on to the next question. This week alone I got 3 complaints, and Air has this contract, and they, in another area not far from this one again, this week an old house was brought over by a grandson. The grandparents are dead. The house had a phone. Phone was cut off down a little lane. Phone was cut off for years, and then they would then do it up and move back. And it's a bad area for coverage. And they wanted a landline this way, and wanted broadband for their business and everything else. And Air agreed and put up the poles and all. And then all of a sudden just told him, no, it's cost analysis. They will not give him a line in. And he wrote to Air after he put up the poles, and they wouldn't give him the wire, even though there was a pole in the house that was cut off. And then he went to Comreg, and Comreg told him, well, we have no role to play. So who has a role to play? You give a contract to Air to roll out the service, and I can name 2 other ones, but I'm not named individually. I'm only rolling out.
To roll out the service within a set of 300,000 premises that they determined on a map. So if those houses are not part of the 300,000 rural air deployment programme, we can't do anything about it.
Does it make sense, though, to put up poles and go to expense of putting up, replacing 2 poles and this lane, or a lane, we call them lanes, but reeds.
Who put up the poles?
Air did. And then, after putting up the poles, said they would not give him a landline connection, but they give him something on the wall, I suppose, a wireless connection. And he wants a landline connection for broadband in particular, and the phone line, because the phone coverage, mobile phone coverage down there is bad. And I can understand that. And another businessman on to me, I spoke about earlier on Carlo today, and he's been on to Air again. Says he paid for his broadband, got his service, and there's something around the service. He's after getting 3 modems being sent to him, and they won't come and fix it for him, even though he's paid. We're paying, taxpayers paid Air and given this contract, and yet they're not fulfilling the contract.
Well, no, we didn't pay Air.
Well, does Comreg have any role, or have anyone enforcement or oversight?
Air are rolling out the 300k at their cost, but absolutely Comreg has a role there in terms of dealing with customer complaints.
Well, all these were contracts with Comreg, and Comreg said we can't force them. That's the word. I think that's what the individuals are telling me, that we can't force Air to carry out this contract or to fulfil their contracts. So, are there anyone in charge?
Comreg's in charge in circumstances like that.
And can they put pressure on Air to fulfil their...
Absolutely. If there's a complaint made, their role is to follow up on the complaint.
I'd like to have Comreg here to question them to know why they're not forcing this. I'm glad to hear that, and at least I can quote that when I go back to them, which I will be in the next 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay, move on to that. Just the last 2 questions then. Incineration, because of our emissions and greenhouse gas emissions, what's your view on incineration? Some people think it's the way forward, and for everything, for supplying energy and everything. Have you a comment to make on that?
So, well, incineration is at the peak of the waste hierarchy. So, reduce, reuse, recycle, recovery, and then disposal of the residual stuff. So you need either landfill or incineration to dispose of the residual municipal solid waste or whatever other type of waste may exist. Our objective is and will be to increase the level of recycling and reduce the amount going to landfill, and the targets that are coming out of the EU are making it much more onerous in terms of the obligations there. Looking at Poolbeg, their operations down there generate, I think, about 86 megawatts of energy, which goes onto the national grid. We've just provided, Michael's team have just completed the first round of allocations through the Climate Action Fund. Part of that is the development of a district heating system in Poolbeg. So the waste heat that comes out of Poolbeg will be used to heat homes within the area. So it's a more sustainable model than simply just burning the waste.
And why do you think that people and public, in general, are so afraid of it? I know it happened in places where, but the modern technology has improved these incineration.
Yeah.
And is there a way that we should be promoting more here as a government, as a department?
Well, whatever about promoting, I suppose what I would say to the public is that the licensing regime that the EPA operates in terms of whether it's an incinerator or landfill or anything else is at the very, very highest standards. And in the case of Poolbeg, for example, there is a piece of technology that people can get on their PC or their laptop, where they can check in the instant the emissions that are emanating from the Poolbeg incinerator. They are monitored extremely closely by the company Covanta itself, and also by the EPA.
And standards are good, I presume.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because when I was a councillor in my previous life, we did go around Europe looking at incinerators. One being proposed that time for every region.
And I'll tell you,
We went around looking at around Europe.
a trip to Covanta is down the Poolbeg is well worth the look. It is an extraordinary piece of infrastructure.
Just the last one that I touched on this morning, these landfills again, just are being monitored. You said 75 or something in category A.
71.
71, sorry, category A. And then there's B and C's. Are all category A is being monitored, for leakages or effluent or anything like that? And then what about the categories B and C? Are they, they're not as serious, but are they being looked at? Or who keeps an eye? Is the EPA or the local government is responsible, the environment part of the county councils?
What I'll do, Deputy, is ensure you get a note on that, because I don't want to say who's responsible for the monitoring and whether it's category A, B and C or who's doing what, so I'll get you a note on that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to everyone for the information.
Thank you.